Memories of a Homeland Unknown is a freeform sculpture and composite portrait of my mother, my grandmother, and myself, centered on the many, independent yet interconnected, subconscious, unspoken stories that live inside each of us. It emerged out of my need to acknowledge all of the racialized and gendered hardships they have survived through, and pays homage to their silent power.
Using ceramics, I wanted to capture a sense of fragility that is in a body, especially a body that lives with intergenerational illness, chronic pain, thinking about the care that's involved in the medium of clay. So clay is alive at a molecular level and it has memory. So when you're building objects and you put it in the kiln to fire, it oftentimes will go back to what it initially was.
I'm drawn to the clay medium as a substitute for the body. It's alive at a molecular level, has particulate memory, and though it's strong and malleable, its handling requires care, a beautiful metaphor for compassionate relationships with disabled bodies.
I really like the play of using clay to replicate and mimic body, memory, wounds. I wanted the work to make you feel that it could collapse at any moment, but in fact, it's able to stand with a lot of strength. I wanted to take advantage of the space in between, the negative space in the body, and through it you can see a wall of joss paper. And so joss paper it's Chinese hell money. It's money that you burn to feed the ancestors in the afterlife. And so you can see that through the piece. This is a self-portrait, but I think in many ways it's also a portrait of my mother and my grandmother, and so it connects all of those, and then also to the, thinking about ancestors and ancestor stories.
This work contemplates the legacy of wounds held in our bodies, looking at the Chinese-Canadian experience of forced assimilation and emotional repression, of which I've inherited as embodied illness through trauma. It speaks to the deep knowing in a body, especially as racialized women and feminized bodies forced to disconnect to cope with the realities of exoticism. Queen Mothers of Eastern and Western Skies is a non-figurative portrait capturing the invisible illnesses and wounds of my maternal ancestry. The title of the work is intended to address the complex disparity of experiences between my Western-born, first-generation Canadian mother and my Eastern, foreign-born grandmother of Southern mainland China. This work traces the lifelong resilience and survival of my maternal ancestry within the context of xenophobic Chinese-Canadian immigrant legacies.
Also, these stained glass tears here, kind of encompassing the work. Also using that bruise coloration that's very frequently used in other works as well. I wanted something that plays with light, kind of gives a sense of wonder when you walk into the space, kind of an otherworldly awe.
The surface imagery making up the bodies are a variety of woven cellular patterns to reference our genetic connection and our shared pains and strengths. I emphasize bodily areas of trauma, for example, my grandmother's uterus, my mother's connective tissues, to emulate the intense embodied nature of illness. I layered transparent and opaque textiles to reveal, conceal the interiority, exteriority of sickness, to address the invisibility of disabilities. It felt important to create this work from textiles, as my first introduction to sewing was from my mother, who was taught by her mother before her. I've come to understand sewing as a familial love language. In the acoustic gallery, visitors can experience works tactily, sonically, and vibrationally.
To me, it was really important to be able to have a sonic offering alongside the visual to kind of bring depth to the many ways that we can experience storytelling. And another layer to it, we have here the Woozer belt. It offers vibrations. It's a vibrational playing of the sound. I'm very interested in vibrations as well. There's all kinds of things you can touch. I wanted to share this work here, which is, I would say, almost like a study for queen mothers of Eastern and Western skies. So it started with this work a decade ago. I started weaving, so dyeing the warp, dyeing weft, kind of thinking about bodies and weaving and thread and fibers. And that's when I started dabbling with that bruise coloration and really finding the kind of depth of intensity that it could hold. Here, some more tactile embroidery, the word no repeated, thinking about different forms of violence, but then often like processing agency. Here's some of those tears from the previous work. These make a fantastic sound. These are from the Memories of a Homeland installation. So because that work is so fragile, the installation can't be touched, but I wanted folks to be able to feel welcome to kind of really tactily engage and understand the amount of detail and feel close to the artist's hand as well, because all of these were handmade, hand-built.
As a lot of my work focuses on embodiment, it was important to me to allow audiences to experience the works in multisensory ways, to allow for slowness and visceral responses to the pieces. A friend of mine, Charity Cruz, a fellow artist from the Filipinx diaspora, created this sound piece as a sonic response to the works and themes in the exhibition. Ligaya is a 10-minute-long instrumentation using padded synths, violin, and improvised voice recordings of childhood prayers that are integral parts of the artist's grounding and healing practice. The song was intended as an invocation for feelings of ephemeral lightness and navigating through being buoyant between spaces of uneasiness to contentment.